So you sent me a you sent me a what do you call it? AI search.
One of them, yeah, I did. I did send you one of those.
So I sent you one. I sent you one this morning as well. Right. Okay. So good morning. Welcome. It is August 19th, 2026, and we're discussing a number of things today, but all really impacting our Niagara economy, how we deal with things in our community, etc., etc. All right. So welcome to Talking Niagara, everybody. And I haven't got any comments to date. Wow. Really? Okay. So here was a question that I posed on.
That's because nobody likes you, Peter.
We always get early comments. Right. Here's the question I posed of AI. I said, has Frank Campion been named by Doug Ford as Niagara's new regional chair? And
so says Ringo Beam. He said so.
Yeah, I know. A few commentators have been, and he was my pick for regional chair. If you think back to when we first discussed this, about when Bob Gale left the job, and at the moment, what basically AI is telling me is no, Mayor Frank Campion has not been officially named by Ontario's Doug Ford as new regional chair, while the provisional government has granted itself authority to directly appoint the regional chair under the Better Regional Governance Act. Permanent appointee has not yet been finalised. The current landscape surrounding the position includes Campion. Certainly Campion is under consideration. But there are along with Campion, there are other names rumored for the appointment, including Niagara Falls Convention Centre CEO Noel Buckley and Progressive Conservative former MPP Bart Mabes, and Lincoln Councillor Rob Foster. The vacancy was actually named on the Ontario website, and so even you and I could have applied if we had been so intended. Right. So there is no selection of regional chair right now. Okay, Dave?
Well, I must have been in the shower when I got when the phone call came. The feed, you're going in and out and jumping around, but you said that even you and I could have got listed as the regional chair. Is that what you're saying?
It was a job ad.
All right, then. Okay, well, I must have been in the shower when the phone call came in, or else I would have taken the job.
Yeah, there was a job application. You can basically apply through the province, right?
Yeah, we're having a little bit of broadcasting trouble here.
I'm not having any trouble at all. I can hear you fine. I don't know why you can't.
I can hear you, but I can hear you, but you accelerate, decelerate, and your video feed isn't consistent.
I'm having no trouble with yourself. Okay. All right. So then the other news.
It likes me.
The other news for today, the next bit of news for today is that these 50% tariffs have been delayed.
Yes, they've been delayed, but I don't trust it. Do you trust it?
No,
I don't trust it. I think our elbows up approach is working, because and thank God the U.S. administration is not very popular. If you want to look at the polls recently, that the U.S. has not had a win since it took over Venezuela. It's had some huge losses. It's huge failures. The Iran war, the Gaza war, and it hasn't done too well with Ukraine either.
Yeah.
It's so it needs a win. It needs a very good win. And when you find that the American people, most of the states in the United States, the Senate, the Congress, who are both Republican weighted, both want the Kuzma deal to continue, and you found trade unions and everything else appealing to the U.S. that the Kuzma deal must continue, you find that the U.S. administration is on its own. And the misunderstanding, and you don't find too much. We found yesterday when we talked about the Manitoba pig farmers going to Iowa trying to explain what Kuzma was all about. They found that their counterparts didn't know much about it, and people still say. The other day, I heard I think it was Paul on his radio station said that huge sucking sound from Canada and Mexico. He still thinks that tariffs are paid by Canada and Mexico. No, the U.S. Everything that we sell to the U.S., if they put a tariff on, it's the average person that pays for it, pays for that tariff tax, and they still don't get that it's the U.S. person that's paying the extra. So when you get a pig like from Manitoba, now you got to pay 20% on top of that, so your meat prices go up.
So if the pig costs $100 to buy, now the pig costs $125 to buy, for example. Yeah. And I'm first to admit I don't know what the price of a pig is. I doubt it's $100. But
they sell it to the Iowa when they're young, so they produce a lot of young piglets, I guess, and then they send them down there, and then from that point on, the Iowans in Iowa get 2 million of them, and then they grow them out of the 3 million we send to the United States. The Iowans get 2 million of them. Then they fatten those pigs up and put them to market. So there's a huge, even though there might be a trade balance between Iowa and Manitoba, they make profit out of that. And so you can't really look at where the supply comes from to look at where the eventual profit comes from.
Yeah.
If you get nickel from Ontario, you don't have enough nickel. You get nickel from Ontario and you make it into something and you sell it, you sometimes right back to Ontario. And Rick says 50% for 3 days to be wrapped up on the 31st. Do you believe that, though? I think they're going to get right to the wire and make it look as if we got a deal. And then he's going to do what he always does. Oh, yeah, but I want this. Oh, yeah, but I want that. You see what he did with the Saudis, right? Saudis, he had a deal with the Saudis. And right at the last minute, he says, but if you join the Abraham Accords, right?
Yeah.
So I made a deal with the Saudis, and right at the moment this deal was supposed to start, he says, "Yeah, this deal happens if you join the Abrahamic Accords." In other words, you never mentioned that before.
Yeah.
You know, and I think he's going to pull
a big thing out of left field. You know, I thought
he did that to the Japanese. He says you gotta spend $3 billion here in the U.S. to get this deal that I'm giving you. And right on the wire, he says, "Oh, I changed my mind. It's going to be $3.5 billion now." So right where you figure you got it done, and then he throws you a curveball, and I think that's going to happen again. Unfortunately,
Mike
he's going to tease us along.
Mike says he will sign the deal, and the next day, he will tariff. What a moron! Yeah. Too
many people in the United States and Canada to still think that the tariffs paid by Canada or Mexico. The reason why Canada and Mexico and everywhere else in the world fighting the tariffs is because if the tariffs go up, the Americans will buy less of your goods.
Yes.
It is the American that pays it. So if you buy, like I said, if you buy a pig from Manitoba and you paid $100 for it, and now you got to pay $125, maybe now $150 if these tariff goes in, and all of a sudden the pig that you bought it now is a whole lot more expensive. And then when you take that piglet and fatten it up for market, you just you have to charge more for the to your customers.
Yeah, but again, let's be honest, Dave. If you've got a packet of pork on, you've got Company A who imports their pork. And they've got a packet of pork on the shelf, and theirs has got tariff money included in it. So theirs is 25% extra. Do you think the US only made pork, a supplier of those pork product? So product B is going to be on the next shelf. Do you think they are going to be 25% less than than product A? No, they're going to be maybe 5% less than product A, because they'll
profit. Yeah, that's what happens.
Well, yeah,
that's what happens, and that's what they found out under Trump's first administration when he put a big charge on South Korean washing machines and dryers and stuff. What did the domestic producers do? They increased their prices so that we were just under the new price for the Korean ones. And so they made more profit. That's profiteering. And
product A is $17.65 a pound. Product B is $17.64 a pound.
Yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens when that happens. And and they still don't understand down there. They think they still under the illusion that Canada, Mexico, and the rest of the world are paying tariffs.
Yeah.
The reason why Canada, Mexico, and the rest of the world are fighting the tariffs because it means that you'll be buying less of their product.
Yeah.
Because it's more expensive. And you're the one that's paying the tax. And we discussed here many times, but this doesn't seem to get out there much. Because when you go and buy something that comes from Canada, it does not have the tariff tax on it. It doesn't have that listed as a tax. And remember when Bezos with Amazon, he was beginning to put the price of tariffs on the products. So just like here, you pay the price, and underneath it shows you how much tax you paid, etc. Well, they want that tariff to be hidden. Yeah. So you pay the state or the state tax or the federal tax or whatever tax, sales tax they have in that particular state, but the rest of it is hidden. Yeah. The only time you show the tariff tax is if you actually buy it directly from a Canadian outfit, then you get the tariff on it. Just like you get the customs charge on it, and then it will show how much tariff you paid on it.
Yeah.
So the American people, the average American people, don't even see that, and so when they say the average person hasn't talked about the tariff, they only talk about the cost. They don't talk about the tariff because they don't see the tariff on their bill.
Of course. Yeah. It's just another sales tax. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When the American farmer buys potash from Saskatchewan 10% more than they did last year, they just think it's an increase in price. And you have to look a little deeper. What is the nature of this cost? You have to look into it. They're not telling you that it's a tariff cost.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. So Niagara Parks is still looking at the observation wheel. So they're reviewing competing.
You hear me, Rick? You hear us?
Proposals and asked for patience while weighing the controversial provincial plan to build a new QVP alternative, to the existing Niagara Skywheel on Clifton Hill, right?
Yes. Harry Oakes Foundation there, HOCO, they want to, of course, they have decided, okay, look, don't you build a big Ferris wheel to compete with ours. That's kind of dumb. And we all said that's kind of dumb. For one thing, we don't want the Ferris wheel on on our park because it just makes it look like an amusement park. It is a nature park basically. It's there for the people to walk up and down. So if you put a gigantic Ferris wheel there, it's dumb. It makes much more sense for Hoko to expand theirs. That's okay. Do you want to put Hoko out of business too? That's the other thing. You got a Ferris wheel and they got a Ferris wheel, and your Ferris wheel is way bigger. What Ferris wheel are you going to go on? And why would Niagara Parks Commission want now to compete with and put a private company or not a business?
I've got an idea, Dave. We hang between Goat Island and just over where the falls have gone over. You know where I mean. We kind of put a nice walkway across, nice bridge across at that point, and hang the Ferris wheel in the middle of that lot. So it has a US station, entry station, a Canadian entry station. And we have a giant Ferris wheel in between there, so you can look above the falls and you can look at you can dip down, to the falls.
Yeah, I'll go on it right after you do.
Which is never.
Yeah. So they keep beaking off about the Ferris wheel. I think probably Hoko, Harry Oak's operation there will just take their existing Ferris wheel and expand it.
Yeah.
And here's Mike Hoko will build it long before the parks can make a decision.
That's true. I think that.
Well, remember the parks, Niagara Parks is public in a way, and they will not be able to go ahead without the public with them. They'll have too much resistance. And it just doesn't make any dent, man.
The only other thing I would say is the current wheel. If I'm right about it, doesn't the wheel actually isn't your back towards the falls when you go on that current wheel?
I don't know.
Yeah,
looks like it's you have to look sideways. Yeah. I think it's in a way that you look sideways and you can watch the falls that way. I think
you need to make it. They need to, if they're going to replace the Ferris wheel, make it look at the falls.
I don't know. I'm sure they've got a suggestion box. You can write something in it.
Yeah. Well, there's my suggestion. Okay. Is it worth? Realistically, is it a good thing? I thought, to be quite honest, the Niagara Parks. The idea about putting it in the park, once Hoko had indicated that they were up for a bigger one, I'd go for the bigger one.
Of course, look, keep Niagara Parks out of this. Basically, why do my point originally is they've got one. Why does Niagara Parks want to put one in to compete with that one and put it out of business? Dumb. If you want to spend, what they're trying to do is make the area around here even more appealing to more tourists. That's why they're talking about getting a lot more casinos in here.
Yeah,
that's why they're talking about a gigantic Ferris wheel, anything to pizzazz the tourist. And right now we have the falls, so people are brought to the falls, and now you need to hold them here for longer periods of time. Squeeze any money out of them they have at the casino, and anything they got left, take it out of them on a Ferris wheel or whatever else. But that's all just part of the putting more pizzazz into Niagara and trying to squeeze some more tourist dollars out of the average tourist.
Yeah, according to what I'm seeing here, basically local mayor Jim Diodati has publicly called the Queen Victoria Park project a dead issue, assuming that the private upgraded plan by Hoko will work and secondary public land will be unnecessary.
Here says Heather Fraser Art says that an official request for proposal, but we have no answer there. The park still remains open for future attraction proposals. That's right. The wheel is not likely the bigger picture. You're exactly right, Heather.
Yeah.
Heather Fraser.
It's
And it
Doug
is
Destination Niagara
plan.
Plan. Yeah. It's written fairly clearly, but do you think what do you think about Destination Niagara Plan? I haven't actually looked at it, I have to say, Heather. I'm generally speaking, I think anybody who's standing for city council needs to be looking at more than, needs to be looking, if you're going to get my vote, you need to be looking at how are we going to develop other income sources for families in Niagara, because because the problem lies is that if we continue to solely rely upon tourism as our primary source of income, it's not going to help Niagara families.
Well, in the meantime, that is what we have.
I know.
And if we expand the tourist, and she says Destination Niagara Plan, I don't know where that came from. It sounds familiar. And I'm sorry to admit my ignorance on that one, Heather Fraser. And is any relation to Karen Fraser there?
I don't know.
Anyway, so that Destination Niagara Plan, we got to look into it. I'm feeling kind of embarrassed by my ignorance of that right now.
No, I have heard of it. I just haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
This is something that was recently published by the Ford government, and he's been talking a number of things about about how we deal with bringing more tourists into Niagara. And Heather says no relation to Karen Fraser.
Oh, okay.
There you go. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on that?
No, but the Ferris wheel thing is only part of what they're trying to do, making Niagara a bigger tourist attraction, because as you said, they just don't really have any other plan for it.
Yeah.
Niagara is known for its tourist industry, and
we will always have that.
And its agri industry.
Yeah, we will always have that, but we need something else as well. All right, moving on. The feds, Newfoundland Quebec are announcing.
Here, man, let me just read this off. Destination Niagara Strategy is a multi-billion-dollar provincial plan launched by the Ontario government. Yeah, we've talked about this. I'd forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Ontario to attract 25 million visitors annually and double the economic impact. Yes, of course, we've talked about this actually a few times on the show.
Yeah.
We've kept it out of our mind because we haven't seen any real moving on it. The tourist attractions, developing new world-class experiences. Yeah, we've talked all about that. World-class gaming. Bring in more and more gambling and wine and culinary tourism.
And
all these things we already have is just basically to enhance them.
Yeah, we will talk more about gambling later on. We've got something coming up. We're talking in relation to gambling.
Yeah, this includes the transportation too, as we've always talked about too, is the airport, and they even talk about motor coach connections from the Toronto International Airport right to Niagara too. So,
yeah,
thank you for that, Heather.
Okay, so at the moment, so we've got a couple of Ebola outbreak in Democratic Republic of Congo has now passed 5,000 reported cases.
Yeah, the Ebola. Yeah, this is surprising to me because the Ebola, I would have figured Ebola is one of those viruses that kills the host rather quickly, and the Ebola outbreaks don't last that long usually. Now I was able to talk to miners and other people when I went to Ghana. When they told me about the previous Ebola outbreaks that they've had in and around the area. I remember looking at the signs that were still left over on village walls, telling people what to do when they get certain symptoms. Unfortunately, Ebola is one of those things that kills quickly. But there's different variations of Ebola, and unfortunately, kind of oddly, if you had the severe cases, which kills you 99% of the time, then the Ebola virus actually dies off rather quickly because it kills its hosts. And if you stay away from those hosts, then it doesn't carry on anymore. But there's some apparent Ebola viruses that only have a 60% from kill rate, and they may be the ones that are moving faster and continuing to spread. Now, Ebola, like, of course, one of the sort of something that people have said about this is this Ebola virus may not have spread as badly as it has because a lot of the USAID aid that helps these countries has been shut down or backed off. I'm not so sure if there's any truth to that or not, but basically it's a warning sign to everyone that, you know, Ebola is evolving to a point where it may break out of Africa, and you've got to be very careful. You got to keep an eye on this like crazy, and sadly, it's the poor people of in this particular case, the Democratic Republic of Congo, are suffering. The problem is most of the African cultures in and around, one commonality among a lot of African cultures from under the Sahel, basically sub-Saharan Africa, is that the family takes care of the sick. So if you get sick, the family comes in and takes care of you. The problem with Ebola and other viruses like that is when the family begins to take care of you, then you get sick, and then more family comes to take care of you, and you get sick, and so on. And that's why some of the rapid development of that. In when the last big one back in was 2017, was it, or 2015 or something like that, when they had a huge one then?
Yeah.
I talked to, when I was in Ghana, as I said, I talked to people that were in and around different countries like Sierra Leone and others, where the people would get on trotros. Like they would say, okay, well, they felt sick, and everyone says, well, you got to go see a doctor. Well, they get on these trotros, which are vans, the long vans that people stuff themselves into, and they call them trotros because trotro used to be a very small coin, which means cheap. So it's a cheap way of getting from one place to another. So they get in crowded trotros, and then they spread it in the trotro. They go to the hospital like everybody says, but the way to get there is through crowded transportation, and then they give it to people in the van.
Yeah.
So part of the problem is the culture there, which insists itself to be the one that protects them. We found too that in the last outbreak that when they took somebody sick and they took them into a care facility, and the family would come and break them out, and because they felt their family member wasn't being cared well enough for, so they broke into the hospital and got them out, and of course they get spread that way.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so back to Newfoundland and Labrador. Basically, there's Ottawa was providing a $10 billion in financing to upgrade the Churchill Falls generating station, develop the Gull Island hydroelectric project to build transmission lines and implement a 2,000 megawatt offshore wind energy project in Labrador.
Well, 2,000 megawatts, that's something. That's the size of surrounding Quebec, basically. That's a lot of power. That's done by wind. But the big one is the Gull Lake project and the expansion of the Churchill Falls. They've come now. That is going to add an incredible amount of power that Quebec can make money off by transmitting it to the United States, plus using it itself. It's going to be inexpensive and green. It's going to take a major investment by the Canadian government and the different provincial governments. This is really, really good news. It's good news for everyone all around. This particular project that they're talking about now is 18 times larger than the Hoover Dam at this particular time. So think of what the Hoover Dam is producing at this particular time and multiply it by 18, and that's the sort of power you're going to get here. You're going to produce twice as much power here as you are in the North America's largest nuclear station, which is the Bruce station. That the new power is going to be twice as much as that. Twice as much as the largest nuclear station.
They're talking about the Churchill Falls. If the Churchill Falls is currently 14,000 megawatts, and they're talking about tripling that capacity. So you're talking about that's going to be 30. That's going to be about 40,000 megawatts. That's a pretty large amount, and they're talking also about creation of 23,000 jobs.
Yes. Now, a lot of this was initiated by the Quebec premier. Was it Legault? I can't remember his name. And this was a couple of years ago. We reported on it. What had happened between Newfoundland and Labrador and Quebec? Newfoundland and Labrador put up the big, huge hydropower, and then they really messed up in their negotiations with Quebec. And they signed a deal that was absolutely terrible. It's still a mystery about how bad this deal was and how they were able to sign this deal, which gave Quebec an enormous amount of the profits and forced Newfoundland and Labrador to supply them with electrical power, which they then transmitted to places in the States and made huge money off of it. And then they took the Quebec to court to see if they could fix it. No, it was plain and simple. They had signed a deal that was very terrible to themselves. It was just a stupid move somehow.
They didn't get the lawyers involved.
They made such an idiotic move.
They didn't get the lawyers involved, you know.
I don't know. Somebody messed up big time. So there was less incentive for Newfoundland and Labrador to develop more of their resources there because they weren't going to make a whole lot of money. As a matter of fact, they had started to plan making more hydro projects and putting the transmission line right through Labrador over to Newfoundland, and then from Newfoundland trying to access the eastern seaboard and the American market. Quebec didn't like the sound of that. And so they said, look, we understand we gave you a really bad deal, but what we want to do is fix that. We want to fix that, and we want to sell more of your power. So we're going to be nicer to you and give you a much better deal. But we want you to develop Gull Island and expand the Churchill project so that you can make money and we can make money. So that was the development. However, it ran into a few snags, and the federal government stepped in to help it along and to invest, $10 billion or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's what the investment is. Yeah.
So this is very, very good news. It's good news for Quebec. It's good news for Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's good news for Canada.
Yeah.
They'll be able to sell a lot of green power, and it's going to be once everything's built. Thereafter, the power will be inexpensive compared to nuclear or coal or any other productions of electricity. The number one, look, when I was in the power plant down in Nanticoke there, I learned that, of course, hydro is the least expensive because, of course, once the facilities are built, thereafter it's just about maintaining them and making profit. So they can sell hydropower a lot less than coal. Coal comes in second, obviously, because the coal technology is very old and very, there's nothing much, dump coal in, and as long as coal is cheap, you can make power cheap. The problem is coal makes a big mess in your atmosphere and everywhere else. Then competitive with coal right now is natural gas. That depends on the price of natural gas, but there's no problem with that now because we have ample supply of natural gas everywhere in the world. So natural gas is going to be inexpensive. And then you have nuclear. And the good thing about nuclear is once you build them, you have a stable base load coming out of nuclear, and it can be held to a certain price as well.
Yeah.
Thereafter, I think the huge anticipation will be coming when a fusion reactor begins, and the Chinese are working very hard on that. I expect them to be the first ones to come out with a fusion reactor. If that happens, forget it. We're going to have all kinds of power.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to something local on the other side of the river. Oh, hang on. Before we do that, I've got a couple of comments. Imagine the data centers will steal the power.
Well, yeah, that's there'll be ample power for data centers, huge amounts of power for data centers. It won't be an issue for Quebec or Labrador to build those data centers.
Yeah. All right. Yep. So moving on. Niagara Falls, New York. There's an update from Doc Holliday, right? Who's basically been looking at a number of things over there. So he's saying about the cover up by the city of Niagara Falls, New York, and this concerns the Griffin Park chemical waste plant, and the saying at the very least, at the height of the industrial dumping, they decided to look away, allowing municipal landfills to be filled with toxic chemical waste. And they knew it then, and they know it now. And for a more, basically, that's what they're investigating right now. And is that the cause of the nuclear, or is this? My question is that where the nuclear source is, or is this part and parcel of the other chemical waste issues that both sides of the river have got issues with?
I would imagine this is more up to date on the chemical part of it. According to the government resources, they only suspect certain areas where the radiation landfill came from.
Yeah,
they believe it was metallurgical processes, and then once the slag, which is left over from the process, that which was radioactive was mixed with other waste and made into a landfill, which is not using the slag left over from steel mills or anything else like that. It's not uncommon for it to be used in things like making roads or something like that. It could be used for landfill. Mixed. I don't think they allow that anymore, but certainly it was a easy way of getting rid of it at one time or another. When I worked at the power plant, they had ash. They never knew what they were going to do with all the ash. Then they found a buyer in the States who used the ash to make cement. And so I don't know, the leftovers of coal produced power was used to make cement, and also for to add to the road aggregate. That's another thing they used in the States when they took our ash from there. So that's not unusual to use what is left over of the industrial process to find a different use for it.
Yeah.
However, And when it's chemical or it has radiation involved in it, and you just want to sort of look the other way. Remember too that Niagara Falls, New York was, I suspect a lot of this got um, happened because Niagara Falls, New York was a very corrupt city. If we believe our reports, that I mean, we hear about the Magadinos sort of running Buffalo and Niagara Falls, New York, and that you could pay off anyone at any time for any reason. I have a kind of a feeling that whoever was supposed to be taking care of this in the city of New York or Buffalo or Lewiston, got a packet of money to look the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost seems that way. But then again, can't we say the same about our government?
Yeah, but Niagara Falls, New York, and Buffalo were famous for being
corrupted and
run by the mob.
Yeah, I grant that, and that is for sure. We understand that that's part of the history of Niagara Falls, New York.
Right? Oh, sure. There's plenty of corruption here too, but I mean, It was they took it to a new level across there.
Yeah. Well, in fact, actually,
I mean, I'm going by what I read.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a guy, I don't know, about 15 years ago or so. He came up with some books on how the area of Buffalo and Niagara Falls, some of their economic woes to this date can trace their origins to how the organized crime really messed things up for them. It was a fellow who wrote a book about it, and then he claimed that a lot of the economic downturn of Western New York, Buffalo, Niagara Falls, New York, was due to a lot of organized crime activity that meddled with the government, governing bodies, and of course, whatever other crime stuff they did.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And Jeff Louts, traditional from thorium and is attributed to ILO. It was associated with Manhattan Project research. Yeah, that's what we've been talking about. Yes.
Yeah. From what I've read, some parts of it may have been with the Manhattan projects. As we know, our own particular Norton plant here, which is in Chippewa, was part of the Manhattan Project too. And we didn't get the radiation though, probably because we were making the boron, which would be the protective shell that went around the bomb, and to absorb the free neutrons. But I don't know what part of the Manhattan Project was in Upper New York State, or whether they just got what was left of it. But according to the government officials, a lot of that, there would be some radiation dumps from nuclear experimentation when it came to bombs or experiments in how to get power out of it. But the other stuff seems to have become from industrial process somewhere. So there might be two sources of this. And what's really frustrating is nobody knows.
Yeah. Well, the weird thing about radiation is that you don't see it in the air. You don't see sludge on the ground. It's only when you run a Geiger counter over yourself you suddenly realize you're going click, 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 click a lot.
Yeah, and how hard they have to fight to have the government place them in temporary housing to get, you know what I mean? Yeah. It looks as if they were building houses at the time and they needed fill for in and around the homes and stuff, so they would use this industrial waste. That would probably come from industrial waste. The other radiation spots that were buried would have come from probably things like the Manhattan Project. Maybe that school that they were talking about, that temporary school they built, would have been on top of a dump from that. But the problem here is where is the map of where they buried this stuff? If it's government and if it's from the Manhattan Project, they would have had some sort of paper trail to tell them where they put it. They don't seem to be able to find that. The rest of the radiation that comes from other processes. Now they're talking about thorium, and thorium is one of the radiation type materials like uranium and plutonium that has much less radiation involved in it, but is thought to be what's going to be the future of nuclear power using thorium, which makes a lot less, apparently, makes a lot less leftover radiation waste. So why would they be using thorium at that time? And if the thorium radiation would not be the same as from Manhattan Project, because they were using uranium, so if it is thorium, then it comes from a different source. Yeah. But still, why doesn't the government know this? And why doesn't anybody, it's just continuous confusion thing there.
Well, probably what has happened, Dave, is, with top secret stuff, they want to shred it all, right?
Maybe, but I think that if it's thorium that they're dumping, that came from a different source and probably did come from an industrial source.
Yeah. All right. While we're talking about things nuclear, Russian enriched uranium shipped to Canada-owned Westinghouse in the U.S.
So a Canadian-owned Westinghouse nuclear plant is getting Russian enriched. Where's Jeff again? The info I have from Nate Benson reported and WGRZ. So I would have to go back to his work, but he has the reports. As you may recollect, the U.S. war machine was very active in Niagara Falls, New York. Yeah, like I said, we did our part for the Manhattan Project on this side as well, not only here in Niagara Falls, but up in Chalk River. It was an international, it was centered in the U.S., but under Oppenheimer, but it was an international effort.
Yeah.
They were able to do it here in North America because they've no risk of having bombs dropped on it or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, you couldn't do that. There was, for a time, some of that was done in the UK, but they stopped doing it because they needed guarantee that they weren't going to get bombed. So they actually moved the people from the UK to North America.
Yeah, and from everywhere else too. They had scientists from all over Europe in on that. The best minds going, and it was a real international effort. Like I said, here, little Canada contributed right here in Chippewa and up in Chalk River. But anyway, so in Niagara Falls, New York, what he says is probably true. And that Benson fella, I'd have to try to look into what he is saying. But still, aside from investigative reporters, why don't they know? Yeah. They only suspect. And when I looked into it a few times there, I kept running across that we suspect, or we have, we don't have direct evidence, but we suspect that this and we suspect that. But they don't really, even then, they don't name the exact source of their suspicion. They just say, oh, probably through metallurgical processes.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to this Russian enriched uranium going to to Westinghouse in the US.
Yeah, well, it's a Canadian-owned Westinghouse nuclear station. Jesus, I didn't even know that Canada invested in a nuclear station. Well, Westinghouse Canada. It's Westinghouse Canada, basically, is the one. Remember, George, Westinghouse are the ones that showed the Chinese how to make a nuclear station. They're the ones that got ripped off for a deal. They're supposed to build X amount of nuclear stations for the Chinese. They built 4, and then the Chinese took the plans and give them the bum rush. And anyway, so the problem here is, how is it that we're at war with Russia and we're taking their uranium? And I'd like to know is, why we take in their uranium when we've got lots here in Canada? Well, the difference is we have the world's largest supply of uranium here in Canada. However, we don't refine it. We send it. We don't enrich it. We send it to the United States to get enriched, and then we buy it back for our own nuclear plants. Here, though, the Russians have an enrichment process, and they supply all kinds of people with enriched uranium for the power plant. So here we are. Here's the United States trying to impose all kinds of sanctions on the U.S., but it needs the uranium, so of course it looks the other way, and so do we. I'd like to know why we don't have enough enriched uranium of our own. That would be an interesting thing.
Yeah, but it's kind of also doing a deal with the US part of this company, not the head office.
I didn't follow.
Sorry, I said, so the point being, Westinghouse is Canadian owned, right?
No, Westinghouse, there's Westinghouse Canada and there's Westinghouse US.
Right.
Westinghouse is originally an American company.
That's what I thought originally. Why are they saying it's Canadian owned?
Because it sounds as if Westinghouse Canada somehow invested in a plant in the U.S. That's not very clear, is it?
No, it's not very clear. Because I always thought Westinghouse was American. And,
Well, yeah, but there is Westinghouse Canada is a different company. It's the same. It's the same, but different. Like it'd be like Westinghouse Britain or whatever else. You know what I mean? It's like CP Rail, right? Right. Canadian Pacific Railway runs all the way through the States. It's bought all kinds of spur lines, right?
Oh yeah.
But if you're going with CP Rail from Missouri to Kentucky, it's an American company basically that came originally from the United States. It's just a
I get that, but surely the Canadian owned part of Westinghouse is should be only dealing with Canadian projects, not American ones.
Why?
Okay.
Why?
Okay.
Look, I worked for Westinghouse, and we had a project in Libya. That's the project I was working on.
Okay.
And they also had a project in the they had one in Saudi Arabia as well. Do you not remember that Westinghouse Canada got in a whole lot of trouble for bribing Gaddafi's agents so that we could sell our generators there?
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But look,
right.
So whatever, the real issue here is they're buying enriched Russian uranium.
Why are we enriching the uranium?
Well, that's my point. Well, Canada's enriched. It has lots of it, like I said before, and we send it to the United States to be enriched. We don't have an enrichment capability. And when you look at enrichment capabilities, you look to Iran, and they have four stations, enrichment zones, which makes you very suspicious that they have to have that many for domestic production of uranium, because Iran enriches uranium too. France enriches uranium. All these people enrich uranium mostly for domestic use.
Yeah.
So they enrich it up to about 3.5%, and that's enough to run power plants.
Yeah, it's enough. It's just for power plants. It's enrichment. It's basic enrichment, not weaponizing.
No. So the stuff they're buying from, the problem here is we're buying it from Russia, right? Why are we buying it from Russia? Because they have it and we don't. Why?
Yeah.
It's because before we relied on the Russian enriched uranium, because they had it and they had their enrichment capabilities. It was just probably cheaper, and that's why they're buying Russian stuff. But the problem here is Russia is involved in itself in a war, and in any other capacity for any other Russian good, it would have been under sanctions. But it's not under sanction now because, okay, Mike says Westinghouse moved. No, that's not exactly right, Mike. They changed themselves to Siemens Westinghouse. They still have facilities here in Canada. They still do in Hamilton, but I don't know about the other means of production. I don't know. I worked there in Stony Creek, and they left for Mexico. Okay, so the facilities I'm talking about were the ones. I don't know what Westinghouse has left here. I know that they were involved in all kinds of power production, gas turbines. They were big on them. That's the ones. Fuel turbines. That's the ones I worked on, and I didn't work on them. I was part of the operation in Libya when I lived and worked there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and they moved offshore for tax reasons. Absolutely, Rick. Okay. Anything else about this enriched uranium?
No, I just think it's rather odd that we're buying enriched uranium under what is supposed to be a Russia of sanctions. We're supposed to be ladling on sanctions on Russia so they cannot conduct their war in Iran, or not Iran, Ukraine. And yet we buy their oil and their gas, and we're buying their uranium.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, Niagara farmers are seeking flood assistance from Ontario, and they're basically flower growers, grape growers, and tender fruit growers are all joining together to request relief.
Yeah. If there is ever a time when the government has to step in with relief, now is that time.
Yeah.
What we do find out, though, in this particular article, of course, we had two rain events, the 28th and August 2nd. There were five or 6 days apart. We had a enormous deluge, huge ponds in the agricultural fields. They're depending on where you were, your crops became endangered, some more vulnerable than others. So obviously, the agricultural workers or owners in and around here are appealing to the provincial government for help. But this also opened a Pandora's box on other issues. For instance, it's not permitted in Ontario to spray your crops with drones. Where in other jurisdictions around the world it looks as if when they're appealing to the government, they can bring this up too at the time they need relief from the flooding. They can say, oh, and by the way, you're way behind on this spraying thing because every other country does it. And the reason why Ontario does not allow spraying of crops, aerial spraying of crops, is because its laws were built when it was done by planes. Now it can be done by drones in a very, not way up in the air, but very close and minimum amounts. So they're going to bring something up like that. They're also going to sort of bring up issues along with other agricultural concerns that the government can help them with. So all you need is one good disaster to open the Pandora's box. Really, we need money for this, but guess what? Let's get into these things that we cannot resolve while we're doing that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things it's like that we talked about grapes, we talked about peaches, you got cherries, plums, pears, greenhouse crops, flowers, and nursery products that are all at risk right now.
Yeah. So if the government's going to relieve this is where government relief and insurance is supposed to come from. And that was another issue they talked about is insurance for agricultural insurance. the Ontario government can step up and kind of help them along with that. We need more comprehensive insurance, and if the government of Ontario has to underwrite that, that's what it has to do. Remember, here in Niagara, agribusiness is our number 2 source of income.
Yeah.
Our agribusiness is huge here.
Yeah.
We always talk about tourism and the odd factory that's still kicking after China's eaten everyone else up, right? But we still have a few factories, but they're not that prominent. Who are the big, who are the big economic clubs in this area? Are tourism and the agribusiness.
Yeah.
Our agriculture is huge business here. And what you want to do, you're talking about enhancing tourism here. How about enhancing the agricultural business and make it more appealing for more investment in agriculture? And you can do that by ensuring the farmers that they can have a better and more comprehensive insurance if a disaster like this happens again, and show the farmers that you will be on their side and in their corner if something like this happens again. And this is a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And while you're doing it, how about fix A, B, C, D, and all these other things that are put back on the back burner? I think it's a good opportunity to address that.
Yeah,
I mean, the Ford government is always talking about enhancing Niagara Falls' tourist industry, this, that, and the other. Well, what they can do is really help out the agricultural business here too.
Yeah,
and because
it
provides a huge amount of jobs and wealth for the area.
Yeah, that's very valuable, and actually gives us even more. It's one of the areas whereby whereby we do need investment, and that investment is also, ironically, some of the things which there's some areas where we need to not build homes. Because
we have to save the agricultural land, because that agricultural land will make this area a lot of money forever. You know what I mean? Yeah. Forever and ever if you keep it that way. The encroachment of land development on that wonderful rural area that everybody wants to live in, and Rick, what does Rick says? We need Trudeau back in.
No, we don't. No,
yeah. Look, if Trudeau came back, well, we'd have our Ferris wheel in a minute. I'm sure of
it. Yeah. All right. Okay. Because it wouldn't be the Doug Ford Ferris wheel; it would be the Justin Trudeau Ferris wheel. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be pink, and it would be run by. It would be run by the 2 LGBTQ, whatever. It would be all that.
Come on, Dave. All of Trudeau's investment went into Quebec, not here.
Well, yeah. I don't know. We're very happy that he's gone. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very happy. It was driving me nuts, the guy.
Fruit farmers will not know till next spring if the trees are totally damaged or not. That's for sure, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the bad news is still pending. How bad the news is anyone's guess at this particular time.
Yeah.
But I'll just reiterate, if there's any time for the government to step in with some help, it's now. And don't be a piker on this one. You know what I mean? Get on it. Get them what they need. Let's help, because it's a source of wealth for the area.
Yep. All right. We have to call it quits right now.
Yes, and I'll bring up Gaza like I always do. And that's not because I'm an anti-Semite. Like some people might want to say that. It's because people are getting killed there, and they're still getting killed there, and children are getting starved there. They get one meal a day. We are not, the Israeli government has yet to allow any international journalists in there at all. And any international journalists who were there were killed. They killed 240 journalists in the Gaza Strip. How about that? They kill American Palestinians in the West Bank and don't let them go to a hospital after they beat them near to death, so they died. Look, that country is out of control, and they are doing terrible things to the Palestinian population there, and they always have. And then people say, well, what about October 7th? Well, October 7th is only one in many, many incidences that go back and forth. The Israelis murder the Palestinians murder the Israelis. It goes back and forth like that. That has been happening pretty much since the beginning of Zionists in 1897. And people don't seem to realize that. They take this particular case by Yair Sinwar, the idiot. He attacks the Israelis. He said he was going to be attacking the Israeli armed forces, but what it did is he came across, I don't know. I don't know. The truth of all that is yet to come out anyway. It turns out that they only killed about 800, and friendly fire from the Israelis killed the other 400. But all that has to be sorted out. 72,000 people, or 70, it's up to 75 now. 75,000 people were killed for a overzealous group of terrorists, Hamas terrorists, that crossed the border and killed 1,200 people, and Israel pays them back by killing 75,000, mostly innocent people. I doubt very much as they even killed 10,000 of the Hamas soldiers, right? We know they killed 25,000 children. The population of Gaza was over 50% children. Under like 50% of them were under 14 and under. 60-some% were under 18. Right? It's a brutal regime that is cold-blooded, and it has to change. And then we can do that by reducing its funding. But the United States is going to step up, and they are being pulled around by the nose by organizations like the Israeli Lobby and AIPAC, which most people don't even heard of until recently. Without further ado, I bid you do have a great day. I pray for peace.